the 10th smallest country in the world, and yet every major empire in history wanted to conquer it for themselves. All of them wanted it. All of them fought for it. Some of them even died for it. So what is it about this tiny island that made it worth all of that? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Around 5,900 BC, the first settlers arrived, most likely from nearby Sicily. And what did they do? They built. And no, not huts or wooden fences. They built megalithic temples that predate both the Egyptian pyramids and Stonehenge. Today, about 7 of these temple complexes are considered UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and they rank among the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. But going back to our story, nobody really knows exactly what these temples were for. Though if we're looking at context clues, historians found little statuettes scattered throughout the sites that they believe to be fertility idols. So yes, it's quite possible that some of these temples were about life. How about death? Well, there's another place built for that, and that's called the Halsaflini Hypogeum. It's an underground necropolis or burial complex carved entirely out of limestone, where the remains of around 7,000 people were found. But then around 2500 BC, these people just disappeared without any clear explanation as to why. Was it drought, famine, disease, invasion? I'm not sure, and historians have explored all of those options without a conclusive answer. So I guess that part of our history will remain a mystery for now. In the meantime, let's look at something we are sure of. Around 800 BC, the Phoenicians arrived, using the islands as a wayport for Mediterranean trade. Then, the Carthaginians took over after them, holding Malta for around 250 years. After them came Rome, which happened during the Second Punic War. If you're not familiar with this, it was basically a massive conflict between the Roman Republic and Carthage for Mediterranean supremacy. Now that we're all caught up, the war started in 218 BC. At the time, the local garrison, according to Roman historian Livy, surrendered without a fight, which, to be honest, worked out fine for them. The island then became incorporated into the Roman Republic as part of the province of Sicily, marking the beginning of Roman influence and development. For a time, Malta operated as a free town. It ran its own affairs, and the islands boomed, the cities expanded. All in all, it was a prosperous era. Then, around 60 AD, something happened. This is going to be a long story, so I'm just going to give you the Cliff's Notes version. Okay, basically, according to the Bible, the Apostle Paul was shipwrecked on his way to Rome to stand trial. He washed up on an island, which people believed to be Malta. There he gets bitten by a viper, yet survives. Then he converts the Roman governor Publius to Christianity, who later becomes Malta's first bishop and first saint. To some people, this story is real and factual. For others, it's a legend. But whichever spectrum you fall under, one thing's certain. It's shaped the culture and religion of this island. So much so that you'll find St. Paul's Bay, St. Paul's Island, and St. Paul's Grotto scattered across the island. Even the cathedral in Mdina was named for him. And fun fact, it was built on the very spot where Publius is said to have welcomed the apostle. But, as strong as this story's grip is on Malta, the same can't be said of the Roman Empire. Because around 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed, and the islands eventually fell into the hands of the Ostrogoths. That is, until 533 AD, when the Byzantine general Belisarius swept through the Mediterranean on his campaign to reclaim North Africa. Yes, Malta was only supposed to be a pit stop on that journey, but there was a change of plans. The Byzantines stayed and formally incorporated it into their empire. So, Malta became a Byzantine territory for the next 3 centuries, until the Arabs showed up, and once again changed the trajectory of their story. From the food to the architecture, to the irrigation system, to the language, everything has the Arabs' fingerprints on it. Come 1091, the Normans took over, and Muslims were officially expelled in 1249. Yet, the language remained. Around 1530, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V handed Malta to the Knights Hospitaller, which was essentially a brotherhood of military monks. The Knights ruled for over 250 years, until Napoleon showed up in 1798. He took the island in 2 days, looted the churches, and then swiftly left for Egypt. While he was out of the country, he left thousands of soldiers behind to hold the place. For a time, the Maltese put up with it, but then the French tried to auction off church property. That was the last straw. So the Maltese rose up, trapped the French garrison inside Vuletu, one of the first planned cities in Europe, and called on Britain for help. By 1800, the French surrendered, and 14 years later, Malta officially became a British Crown colony. Now that chapter in their history peaks during World War II, when Malta became what Churchill called an unsinkable aircraft carrier. And here's why. Malta actually sits dead centre in the Mediterranean, right along the supply routes running between Europe and North Africa. The British knew that if they bombed Malta, they would disrupt those routes. But if they held Malta, they could bleed the enemy dry. Churchill got that, so they decided to hold Malta. The other nations, though, like Germany and Italy, opted for a harsher approach. So they bombed it, relentlessly might I add. The island nearly starved, but it survived. And in 1942, King George VI awarded it the George Cross, which was Britain's highest civilian honour. And that cross, well, you can actually see that on the Maltese flag today. But anyway, after that, Malta gained independence in 1964, became a republic in 1974, joined the EU in 2004, and adopted the euro in 2008. I get it, that's a lot of information packed in a short amount of time. And yeah, we covered some ground with their history, but really, the highlight of this video's got to be Malta's geography. So, let's check it out. The whole archipelago covers just about 122 square miles, or 316 square kilometres. It technically consists of several islands, but the only three that matter are Malta, Gozo, and Camino. The rest are essentially uninhabited rocks poking out of the sea. First, let's head over to Malta. It's the main island, and the landscape here is quite cinematic, if I do say so myself. There are no mountains or rivers, but what you will find are low rolling hills and terraced fields, held together by centuries-old stone walls and cliffs. In the summer, the whole island turns brown and arid, which might not be its best look, but don't worry, because come autumn the rains hit, and suddenly there are wildflowers everywhere, purple Maltese centauri blooming across the hillsides, solar clover growing almost head height. It's really quite a sight to see. Then there's the coastline. A lot of travellers enjoy basking in the view from this part of the island, admiring the turquoise waters while contemplating their lives. But you want to know the best spot here? It's the Grand Harbour on the southeast side of Vuletu. Some people say it's the crown jewel, and honestly, I get it. It's a deep, naturally sheltered port that's basically the reason every empire in history wanted this island in the first place. Oh, and while we're in Vuletu, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's built on a steep promontory called Mount Schiberus. It rises dramatically out of the water, with harbours flanking both sides. Within the city, you'll find tons of stone houses, ornate balconies, and streets that feel like they're cascading downhill toward the sea. It's really one of those cities that feels like it was designed to be looked at. That's how beautiful this capital is. Now, moving out of Malta, let's head over to Gozo, which is just 3 miles or 5 kilometres northwest of the main island. It's much quieter and greener, and for some people, this is paradise to them. Of course, there are still the usual features like rugged coastlines, deeper valleys, farming and fishing villages, but you'll notice right away that it moves at a different pace. Then there's Camino. It's wedged between Malta and Gozo. It's pretty small, covering only about 1.35 square miles, or 3.5 square kilometres. There's barely any fresh water. And fun fact, there are only about 2 to 4 permanent residents here. Isn't that wild? Yet it draws thousands of tourists every year. Want to know why? It's because Camino houses one of the most sought-after attractions on the entire island, the Blue Lagoon. It's a stretch of water so absurdly clear that it looks photoshopped. And honestly, I could describe it for you all day. But the best way to understand just how gorgeous this place is if you see it for yourself. So if that's something you want to do in the near future, I've dropped the links to book your flights, accommodations, and cruises in the description. You know, for a country so small, Malta's economy is genuinely impressive. Experts forecast that the GDP growth will remain stable at around 3.7% to 3.9% in 2026, with a nominal GDP of about $25 billion US. I know that might not seem like much, but that's actually a pretty good sign. And just so you understand the scale of that, The EU average hovers around 1.5%, which means Malta is more than doubling that. And it's been doing so consistently, thanks to several factors. Tourism is one of them. If you'll notice, for a lot of island nations, tourism tends to spike during the summer season. But in Malta, the visitor numbers have been climbing even in the shoulder months. That's a big deal, actually, because it means that the economy isn't just seasonally dependent anymore. People are now showing up year-round. Besides tourism, employment is quite a huge contributor to the economy's success. Malta's unemployment rate sits at around 2.9%, which, let's be real, is as close to full employment as you can get. The flip side, though, labour shortages. Remember, the island is small. Apparently, it's growing faster than its workforce can keep up with. So, how does it fill the gaps? Well, it's been leaning heavily on immigration lately. The good news is, wages are rising. It's forecasted at around 5.9% growth in 2025, outpacing inflation, which was at 2.4% in 2025. By 2027, hopefully, it'll drop to 2% as experts project. You know what that means. People's purchasing power is going up, so they can spend more while giving back to the economy. It's a win-win scenario all around. And look, statistics are cool and all, but they don't tell you what it actually feels like to be here. For starters, the people. The Maltese are so warm. They treat everyone, yes, even tourists, like neighbours. And you'll really feel like you're part of a community. That's why crime here is almost a non-issue. It's so safe and comfortable. So yes, I totally get the hype. A lot of people who visit Malta fall in love with the people, the pace, the sunshine. And if they had a choice, I don't think they'd book a return flight. Actually, a lot don't, so the expat community is huge. I know what you're thinking. How are they getting by in a foreign land? What about the language barrier? Well, it's actually not that hard because in Malta, there are two official languages, Maltese and English. English is literally everywhere. Road signs, menus, newspapers, TV. You'll have little to no trouble getting around because of that. But Maltese, that's where it gets interesting. Because while it's technically a Semitic language, meaning it's related to Arabic, it's been soaking up a lot of Italian, French, and English for centuries. So you could say it's a hybrid language. And the funny thing is, every village has its own spin to it. Besides that, culturally, this place is buzzing with jazz festivals, opera, rock concerts, and art exhibitions. There's always something going on, so it's never a dull moment. But you know what people anticipate the most? It's the village feast. Every summer, towns across the island go all out with brass bands, elaborate street decorations, fireworks, and of course, food. Oh, the food. Malta runs on a classic Mediterranean diet. Olive oil, fresh seafood, tomatoes, and pasta. Though one dish you absolutely have to try is a pustitsi. It's like a flaky pastry stuffed with either ricotta or mushy peas. It's super cheap, and you can find them at pastizzerias on basically every corner. Look, you can skip the museums, you can miss the ferry to Gozzo, you can even sleep through the village feast. But if you leave Malta without trying a pustitsi, I'm sorry that trip doesn't count. And that got me thinking, what's the one dish from your country that you'd make every visitor try? No exceptions. Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this next one.